Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on primary aggressor. I guess it's a good title. Um, Probably most of what I'll talk about is the issue of domestic violence and how it factors into custody decisions and the disconnect from reality on the issue. Because the thing about domestic violence is, I think a lot of people who haven't gone through it, and this is probably one of the issues for the jury in the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. I think they kind of have this idea, almost like a movie or like a commercial sort of presentation of what it is, where there's this, and we'll just use male aggressor since it's the instinct most people have. Honestly, it could be both, but there's this like really strong, powerful male aggressor, and then there's this his wife or girlfriend who's smaller and weaker, and he like bullies and abuses her physically as a method of control. Like that's probably what most people who haven't had like an experience with it, or even some that have, think of, when they hear the words domestic violence. And when you think about child custody cases, divorce actions and such, of course that's an issue because it's a control issue. But I think a lot of times what the law is concerned with isn't so much punishing somebody for having done something wrong in these child custody cases anyway, but it's more so wanting to make sure that the kids have the best future possible. And since that kind of violence is really impactful and damaging to kids, I think that the legislature, in enacting the statute, and the courts want to minimize the kids' exposure to that. So in that kind of scenario, clearly they're going to put primary physical custody with the victim because she's not the one that's doing those things. So if the kids live primarily with her, their exposure to it is minimal. So then comes this notion of primary aggressor, which it gets brought up in these cases where there's two people fighting each other, which I don't know how common it is. I don't know if they've done studies on this to determine how often is it the sort of cliche where there's this one abusive, controlling person versus two parents who just don't have good ways of communicating and sort out their disputes through violence mutually. You have those situations where this term primary aggressor comes up, and it's like, I guess the court's trying to figure out who's the worst one of the two, or if somebody is just defending themselves, they're not really initiating the fights, which I don't even think they should use the term primary aggressor for that. That should just be they're a victim. I don't know really what the courts are doing with the term. I guess some of them call it mutual combat or mutual domestic violence or something. Obviously, the situation here, it's inapplicable because the court can put the children with one person and that parent apparently solves their problems through violence, so the kids are still going to be exposed to it. Or they put the children with the other parent, same problem. So what I'm trying to say here is the sort of cliche, I guess, objective or goal of these domestic violence statutes that control who gets physical custody, it doesn't really apply. That it doesn't solve the problem. The courts really can't do anything about it in a realistic way if the kids are going to be exposed to it no matter what because both parents are doing it. Um, I'm not a huge fan of this primary aggressor idea because, like I mentioned to you, it makes it just seem like, in my opinion, that the law is just being used as a strategic tool because it's not going to actually solve any problems for the kids. It's not going to fix anything for the kids going forward. If there's two aggressors and one is just worse than the other, I guess it depends on how much worse. But that's really, I think, where the disconnect is that the people who are going through these high conflict child custody cases where domestic violence comes up have a different sort of understanding of what domestic violence is than the public and people who just sort of have this sort of cliche, really abusive person and really pathetic victim who's being controlled. So that's why I think the the Johnny Depp trial ended up getting a lot of attention because it kind of probably helped people see that, well, I guess in this situation, I'm not even going to say that it was two people fighting each other. I think most of the public decided that Johnny Depp was a victim. But it helps, I think, people see one of the most important parts of domestic violence is the fear component. Is why is this person who's claiming they're a victim not afraid of the person they're claiming, is the abuser? That was one of the things that I saw a lot in the comments and people pointing out during the testimony, is that I guess Ms. Heard was not afraid, or she was like provoking him or saying, like, in other words, what they're trying to say is what people are trying to say. I guess there's a lot of different contradictions, but this is probably the most impactful one, is if you're being horribly abused by your partner, why are you like provoking him? And it sucks to say that, because a lot of opponents are like, it doesn't matter if they provoked him, they still shouldn't have. But it does matter to a lot of people, because they see domestic violence as a control mechanism, as like, I'm going to make you do what you don't want to do, because if you don't do it, I'm going to beat you up. Like, that's what people are thinking it is. And they're like, if somebody is afraid of being beat up, they don't like go and like antagonize that person that they're afraid of. That just doesn't, like, people can't make sense of it. That's like if you have this like bully at school and you're supposedly afraid of him, but you like shoot spitballs at him. People are like, you're not afraid of him. You're trying to piss him off. So that's one of the biggest contradictions that comes up. I kind of wandered into this topic of why is the victim not afraid, because that's kind of directly tied to this whole control, this notion of control and manipulation and coercion. So when people are seeing these domestic violence situations, and they're seeing that it doesn't match up with the cliche idea of what it's presented as, and instead you see like a person who's claiming they were beat up, but is also antagonizing their so-called abuser, and like saying all these horrible things and gloating and being cocky, and it just really, I think it really upset a lot of the public. I don't know how many hundreds of millions of people watched that trial. Maybe it was 10 million, tens of millions. I don't know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. But it was just like, it was almost like Amber Heard made a mockery of the whole thing, of this whole idea. I mean, you've got the government talking about the Violence Against Women Act, and Hollywood and the news has their own sort of portrayal of what this all is. And then you've got this trial that if you couldn't see it, all you would be able to do is read reports. And of course, you wouldn't really know what was going on, but the people could watch this one. And so they were like, what the heck? This is like making a mockery of this whole domestic violence thing. And in the end, he, I guess, got a verdict in his favor. By the way, guys, for anyone thinking that that's the solution to your problems, like if you've been falsely accused of domestic violence and you think, oh, well, I'm just going to do what Johnny Depp did and sue for defamation, think again. I mean, he got lucky that he was able to do that. The whole like defamation, it's not really meant to do what he did with it. I mean, there are certain elements to prove defamation, and there are certain defenses. And honestly, if the situation was not as one-sided as it was, Johnny Depp could have easily lost that case, even though he wasn't really the monster that he was portrayed to be. He could have been innocent and still lost his defamation case, because it's an apples and oranges sort of comparison. It's like the use of a defamation lawsuit is not this shield that's there to directly confront a lying person. There's a whole lot more to defamation than just somebody lied about you. A whole lot more. And I mean, the First Amendment is involved in that analysis, and it just heavily favors free speech. Guys, do not think that that's the solution to this problem. And he was lucky that he was able to make it work. It was a very one-sided situation. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is he had the money to make it work. And I don't even know if the decision would have mattered. really, it was the coverage. He didn't. I mean, if he would have lost the lawsuit or won the lawsuit, I don't think it would have cleared his name. I just don't. But to have camera access and to have that many millions of people watching it, that really was his victory. In fact, I think I read an article where he said he was thinking about not even going after her for the money. It was definitely, without a doubt, the publicity that made the whole thing worth it for him, that completely saved him. I mean, if you look at there's another case, I think it's in England, UK, whatever, where Amber Heard won. And it's like it doesn't even matter that she won. Nobody cares because they didn't see the case and there wasn't a jury. It was just the judge who decided she won. And that wasn't even like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like a protection order or something. I don't know if the legal analysis on that was really that she was an actual victim, because I know in Nevada, no. In Nevada, protective orders are not, they can be given if you're an actual victim, but you don't have to actually be a victim. The court just has to say that there's a potential for violence. Sure, you've never done anything, it doesn't matter, I'm still going to grant it. Even though you haven't done anything, there's a potential that you might. So, anyway, all that being said, I think that I kind of covered this issue from all different angles. Um, Really, that's what it comes down to, in my opinion, is that the domestic violence statutes are there not so much to punish a parent, but to say, okay, this particular person is violent. It is really damaging to the kids to be exposed to that. So going forward, most of the time the kids are going to be with the other parent who's not violent. That's the point of that law. And it's not to punish, it's to look forward. However, oftentimes, in fact, probably more than half of the time, the lawyers use it as a silver bullet, and it turns into whoever proves that they are, less violent than the other wins and gets custody. It turns into who cares about the kids and what's going to make their lives better. Whoever proves they're more violent than the other person, that person loses and the other person wins, and there's a primary aggressor, even though both people are fighting each other. And by the way, I know that a lot of people don't like to hear that domestic violence doesn't matter in child custody cases if both parents are violent. It actually does matter in the moral and societal sense, but it doesn't matter in the legal sense because there's nothing the court can do. So like people get frustrated that, oh my God, I accused my ex of domestic violence, and then rather than defend themselves, he just pointed the finger back at me and said, oh, well, you did it too. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a mature argument. Like, yeah, he did it too, so he's also bad. And then you go to court and it's both sides trying to prove who's worse. I know that that is not a mature, like, grown-up argument, but it's effective in family court, because how is the court supposed to protect the kids from one parent if the other parent's doing the same thing? It's valid. And so, like, that's one of the things that I get messages on that frustrates people. And same thing with the primary aggressor thing. It's like, okay, we were both violent, but the judge decided they were more and they got to get custody of or you know what I mean. All that stuff, guys. There's a lot to think about. The whole point of what the law is versus how lawyers use the law is something that people discuss on this channel a lot. So I guess all of that being said, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to post them down below, and I will see you guys next time.